going on, everybody? Aiden from Birds First Boys here, reacting to the Eagles 49ers NFC Championship rematch. I'm just going to get ahead of it and say that could have gone a little better. That could have gone a little bit better. And if Jalen Hurts was seriously hurt there at the end with a concussion, it would have possibly been the absolute worst case scenario. That was brutal to watch. It got worse as it went, and it was surprising considering how that first quarter went for the Eagles. The 49ers in that first quarter ran just 6 plays, didn't have a first down, and had absolutely nothing going. I was actually kind of shocked by their strategy there in that first quarter. No touches for Christian McCaffrey, not a single run. They came out throwing. They were behind the sticks. Hassan Reddick, ironically, gets a sack on Brock Purdy on that first drive. I couldn't believe it. It's just so funny to me that after all that, and then Reddick gets a sack on that first drive, and it's like, all right, the defense is locked in. Let's go. This is amazing. But as things progressed, it obviously went completely downhill for the Eagles. And it was just a shocking turn of events for how it turned out. After that first quarter, I think you saw them really settle in, and there were a few key points here. But let's start with the 2nd and 15, deep in their own territory. There's a false start, and then they have the throw to Brandon Ayuk, who gets them into a manageable 3rd and 4. And this is where the Eagles' problems really start, with getting themselves off the field, not allowing the teams to convert on 3rd down. George Kittle had a catch there, and it really just felt like it woke their offense up. It was their first down of the game. It comes in the second quarter, and it just started to feel like they got their flow from then on out. And I thought in that first half, George Kittle really had some big catches, and he'll be the most unsung hero of this because Deebo Samuel had 3 touchdowns, because Brandon Ayuk played well. Even Jawan Jennings had some huge 3rd down conversions for that team. So there were a lot of different things going on with it. But I thought his production in the first half and that first down was like, all right, it allowed the 49ers to settle in, and they did a phenomenal job after they settled in. And on the opposite side, there was not a single reception by the Eagles tight end group. Not a single one. They didn't have a single reception. So to have that in an arms race that we've talked about, whether it's the 49ers, the Eagles, the Cowboys, feels like every weapon matters so much on the road to the Super Bowl with these 3 teams, to get absolutely nothing out of a key position in tight end, and for them to have a big production from their guy early there in the game to settle them into their offense, I thought was huge, and it'll probably get overlooked considering everything that happened, considering what the beatdown became, considering the fights and everything like that. But I just wanted to get out in there because personnel-wise, completely outplayed from the tight end position. Now, like I said, that 3rd down was the beginning of the end for the Eagles, because it was just 3rd down after 3rd down. You come out in the second half, and it's just feeling again like this defense just can't make a play. They can't get themselves off the field. They can't make the big play. So on that first drive of the second half, and this is after you gave up back-to-back touchdown drives to end the half, they get the ball to start the half. Reed Blankenship has the ability to make a pick, drops it. Then you're in a 3rd and 4. All right, so get yourself up the field. Nope, that's a conversion. 33-yard game to Christian McCaffrey. Goes right over Nicholas Morrow's head. He's totally lost in coverage. And I thought that was another problem that the Eagles faced. If you're looking at linebacker, I thought they were totally exposed. I thought the positions that we thought were weak for the Eagles led to a lot of the 3rd down conversions for the 49ers. That was a key example. Linebacker on Christian McCaffrey. Aside from a Christian Ellis stop of McCaffrey in the backfield, and I think the second quarter to put them into 2nd and 13, did you really see anything from the Eagles linebackers that was a positive play? I thought they were constantly out of position. They looked lost. They looked guessing. That play was a gash where Morrow just completely lost McCaffrey. He obviously came back up later in the game when Deebo Samuel bounced off of him, missed tackle. That turns into a touchdown. I thought the linebacking core was weak. I thought the slot cornerback position was weak. Eli Ricks came in on 3rd downs. We talked about it. Jawan Jennings had a few 3rd down conversions, including that touchdown there where he just stiff arms Ricks off of him. Hard to blame like an undrafted free agent for the downfall of the Eagles when they give up 42 points. But man, it was bad. And I think it was just the positions that we thought were weak were proved to be weak when you played a good team like that. And if you're leaving this game and you're like, I'm freaking out, I'm concerned, I feel like that would be number one. Like we thought linebacker position was weak. There was no depth. And yeah, that's true. And I think they have the ability to strengthen that position, and we'll get to that here in a second. Or safeties, again, another problem that we've had. I thought they didn't play that well. Kevin Messina, hey, buddy, this is good for us. This is good for you because this sets up our entire show next week. Eagles, Cowboys. This will be fantastic. This is the entire reason that we made this Birds with Boys show, is because that the Eagles and the Cowboys are going to be competing for first place. This is Kevin, who is a Cowboys fan, commenting on this about how we got dog walked. This is like the meme when they're getting hung. And it's like, oh, first time, considering that every time the Cowboys line up against the 49ers, they get dog walked. Playoffs, regular season, every single time. So now I know how you feel every single year when your season ends because this team just beats the hell out of you. This goes. And as Kevin mentioned, dog walked here, and we're going to be doing about 17 shows a week for this Eagles-Cowboys game coming up. And it becomes so imperative for both of these teams considering the performance today for the Eagles against the 49ers. So again, the third down conversions, not being able to make a play, just couldn't get themselves off the field in key moments. And it was just like that early in the second quarter that got the 49ers offense going. And then coming out of the half, you just need to stop. And really, it just felt like for a quarter and a half there in the second half, if they just got a stop, just a singular stop, that the offense could get the ball back and compete. You saw the situation where Trey Greenlaw, scumbag, suplexes Devontae Smith, scumbag, should probably do jail time, 25 years to life. Suplexes Devontae Smith, then punches Big Dom, the security guard. That fires the team up. They go down and score, and you just get a stop. Like, just get a single one. You're praying for a single stop. But they just couldn't do it. They gave up 6 straight touchdown positions, and I thought it was a good job of the 49ers coaching staff of exploiting the positions that we thought were weak for the Eagles. Now, going forward, are those weak positions for the Eagle? If you're Darius Leonard and you're sitting there, we knew that his decision was going to come after the games played out this weekend. He was talking to the Eagles. He was talking to the Cowboys. And you're probably saying to yourself, oh, the Cowboys won. They have 4 straight wins. Ooh, the Eagles lost. They got blown out. So that would mean that Darius Leonard is going to choose the Cowboys, right? I think if his issue with the Colts was playing time and not playing enough, if he watched that Eagles game today, if he doesn't think he could get playing time in this linebacking core, you might not be able to get playing time anywhere in the league, because that was as bad as it can get from a linebacking core, and they were terrible today, guessing, totally lost in coverage, not able to make tackles on McCaffrey, on Samuel, whoever you'd expect it to be. They were bad. So if you're sitting there and you're Shaq Leonard, you're like, if I had problems with my playing time, I know where I could get playing time, and it's with the Eagles. So that'll be an interesting decision this week, and I think there are correctable things if you see the 49ers in the future. One of them is that linebacking position. Zach Cunningham, who did not play with the hamstring. Nakobe Dean is obviously out. He's been hurt. I don't know what impact he would have, but I think Cunningham would have an impact. And I think Darius Shaq Leonard would have his impact as well. Would he be a valuable, positive member of the passing game and the passing defense? Probably not. But I think he would do a good job in that front seven and just having stability within that defense. And it just looks at time like they don't have any stability. They guess too much and they feel lost. And I think he should probably be here if he wants to play. So that's my selling point to Darius Leonard, is like, if you watch that and you don't think you can play here, you're not playing anywhere in the league. Now, going forward, Sean Desai has been, kind of the golden boy, and he's getting all the, attention positively in terms of like being a head coach next year. And Brian Johnson is the problem child. He's the kid who always got sat in the back of class, and the teacher was like, don't pay attention to the class clown. He'll make you laugh. He's just trying to cause trouble. That's what we've been saying about Brian Johnson all year. I don't know what you saw from Sean Desai today that was like, oh, this guy is a genius. I thought he allowed Brock Purdy to be way too comfortable. It took until they were down by 2 possessions to really actually like bring blitzes, bring pressure on Purdy. And they just let him sit back there and get too comfortable. And like early in that half, they had a Fletcher Cox gets a sack. It's 3rd down and long. The conversion to Brandon Ayuk, they don't get pressure on that play. And it just felt like they never made Brock Purdy uncomfortable outside of that first quarter where he was shaking his head, walking off the field and throwing the ball away after a sack. And I just think for like all this flack that Brian Johnson has caught all year, this needs to be the moment where we say to Sean Desai, like, what were you doing, man? Like you looked bad. Your defense looked as bad as it could have looked against this 49ers team. So if we're going to week after week pile on Brian Johnson for what a bad job he's doing as an offensive coordinator, the same needs to be said for Sean Desai this week, because you just can't have a performance like that. That was embarrassing. That was really embarrassing because they were totally out schemed. Now, again, I told you there's some correctable personnel things, hopefully, with the addition of Darius Leonard, hopefully Zach Cunningham being back. I just thought that the linebackers got lost so much that maybe it didn't matter what plays you're calling on defense, what pressure you're bringing, everything like that. You were just too lost. There were too many weapons for you to handle. And in the slot cornerback position, again, it was like Bradley Roby didn't make plays. Eli Ricks didn't make plays. They just, the positions that are usually lost were lost. And maybe that's not Desai. That's just what he has, you know? It's not like with Jonathan Gannon where you're like, all right, there's like 6 or 7 all pros on this defense and you can't seem to figure this out. And the opposing quarterback has like an 85% completion percentage. Like we should be able to figure this out. Right. So I think we need to give him some blame. You can blame everybody for this game because it was fucking horrible. But I just think that every week we pile on Brian Johnson. It's like, all right, we need to focus and shift on the other side of the ball because there's moments where I'm like, if Hassan Reddick doesn't get there, if Josh Sweat doesn't get there, then it becomes a problem where they can just go over the top of our defense, expose them for chunk plays, constantly in 3rd and 2s instead of 3rd and 12s. You know, like last week, the Bills had 500 yards of offense, couldn't get them off the field. Same problem this week. Couldn't get the 49ers off the field. Unfortunately, no one will be hiring Desai to be a head coach in the future. Brian Johnson wasn't the main reason we lost the game, but he still isn't it. That's true. I really think that is true. I go back to that second quarter with the Eagles. The running game wasn't there today, but you can still utilize it. Like they just didn't even try. And I think there's been multiple moments this year where they just like give up on the running game. And they had a series where they had 6 plays, punted the ball, and they threw it 6 times. They were bailed out by Devontae Smith, that 3rd and 19 conversion where he bounced off a few guys. Again, hilarious that at some point people thought he was too small to play in the league, and now he's just this, like dominant force and bouncing off people. But again, they just like get away from the running game, and it's like it's not just gash plays. Like if you're not getting 8 yards per clip, that doesn't mean you should quit it, because there was no guessing that the 49ers defense had to do. It was very predictable. And it was like, I talked about this doing the TikTok live at halftime. Dan Orlovsky does a good job of breaking down all 22. And when offenses are doing bad, he asks the question, why? What was the reason? Why did you flex somebody out of the backfield? Why did you bring a guy in motion? What was the purpose of doing those things? And I thought that so much in the second quarter with the Eagles. Like, what is the why of the offense? Because it just feels like you're dropping back the pass, hoping that Hurts can hold the ball long enough till someone gets open and make a play. And that's just not a sustainable way to run an offense. And it felt like that for the majority of the day, where it just turns into this like backyard football kind of thing where it's like the offensive line holds up. Hurts keeps the ball. He kind of bails out to one flat or the other. And then by that time, one of the receivers is skilled enough to get open. And I just don't think that's sustainable. And it doesn't need to happen. I know that you're not going to be able to run the ball on the 49ers the way you would another team because their front is so good with Bosa, with Chase Young, with Javon Hargrave, and obviously Fred Warner is probably the best linebacker in the league. But you don't quit it entirely because it takes out the guessing of the offense. They're not looking for run at all. They're totally playing the pass. Jalen Hurts, who can make plays with his legs and read option situations, you take that away. You take play actions away. You pretty much make yourself a one-trick pony in an offense where you don't need to be, and in an offense where you're already missing one of your best weapons. And there's been times where I feel like they lose focus and they become unbalanced and they just drop back to throw. And you're asking yourself, where's the why of this offense? Why? And I just didn't like that today. And I think it snowballed because the defense couldn't get themselves off the field. So when you're having situations like that, where you're dropping back the pass and then you're in 3rd and 19, that's not sustainable. And it puts your defense in a bad spot. And they were clearly hurting and couldn't get themselves off the field. Definitely to blame more than BJ. Sirianni needs some blame too. Yeah, I do think that the entire coaching staff needs some blame for today. They got out schemed on both sides of the ball. And you don't see them lose in the trenches that often, but I thought that they did lose today. And again, this is a perfect situation where if you're going to criticize, nobody's wrong. Like if you can put anybody in the chat of who deserves blame, and you are correct. Because I think even in situations like they schemed it up correctly and you'd have like McCaffrey dead to rights in the backfield and they would just miss. Nobody would make a tackle. Nobody in the defense can make a play. There were so many situations where it looked like it was going to be 2nd and 12 and all of a sudden it's 2nd and 2 and they can't stop McCaffrey. And that leads to 450 yards on offense. So now you're in a situation, you give it up 950 yards of offense to the opposing teams and back in the last 2 weeks combined. So in that situation, when it's that bad, it's not one guy, it's not one position, it's not one person. Everyone deserves to get blamed for something like that. The short passing game is the kryptonite of the Eagles defense, and the run defense has been bad the past 3 games. Yeah, it definitely feels that way. That's why I thought I was so shocked with the 49ers game plan coming out early, where uh, it looked like they were trying to set up some shots. They had McCaffrey lined up to the right out in the flat, and it was kind of a weird formation, but they weren't running the ball, and they didn't try to attempt the short passing game. I thought they were going to do that, similar to the way that the Bills utilized Josh Allen and James Cook last week in the rain, just trying to get the ball out of his hands quickly. And they didn't really do that in the first quarter. Like I said, 6 plays, no first downs, and it just looked so helter-skelter and bad. But then they started to get it together, and you're right, the short passing game, the last play, and I know this is probably a bad example because I don't know if this was an execution or a scheme thing. I think the Eagles just flat out fucking gave up is the problem. On that Deebo Samuel screen, like he gets out there, he scores the touchdown, and it's just like they can't seem to they can't hold these guys to these 2nd and 11 plays the way that they need to. And they can't put people behind the sticks the way that they want to and then get after you with the pass rush. And I think that's really concerning if you're an Eagles fan. 2 field goals were killer. The third quarter punt, instead of going for it on 4th and 2 down 14 points, was out of character for the team's DNA. I do agree with that. So the field goals, you're sitting there at halftime and you're down 14-6, and you're like, all right, well, we just dominated a quarter. They dominated a quarter. Why are we down by 8 points? And it's because you weren't good in the red zone, which that is the one thing I'll say. The past few weeks, they've been really, really good in the red zone. So this was uncharacteristic for them today to be that bad in the red zone. And I think it hurt them early. And again, back to the offensive scheme where it's like Jalen Hurts kind of playing the backyard football where he holds it, runs around a little bit, waiting for somebody to get open. Well, that backfired on them twice, and he slips and falls, and it turns into sacks and puts you way behind the sticks. And that happened there on that first field goal where they're driving down the field. He falls down. All right, now you're back at like the 30-yard line, right? So I think that was crucial. And I think that goes back to not trusting the running game, not trusting your guys up front, which they have no reason not to. And yeah, going forward, I know that you were in 49ers territory, but it kind of reminds me of the Super Bowl where it's like your defense has not proven to you that they can get a stop at all. They haven't gotten a stop in a quarter and a half. You might as well try. And I think about this with like fan bases all the time. If the Eagles don't convert there on 4th and 2, are you mad at them for going for it? Like, is anybody in the Eagles fan base mad at them for going for it on a 4th and 2? Probably not. Like, if the play doesn't work, we're probably mad at the scheme or the play call, but we're not mad at the decision to go for it. So it did feel like a game where it did not matter if the Eagles made the 49ers go 75 yards or made them go 45 yards. Either way that they were going to score. And you wanted to turn that into a shootout, and you just didn't hold up your end of the bargain. And I just thought that whole game, like, you didn't put pressure on them. You did such a good job of putting pressure on them in the first quarter, whereas like they were moving the ball around. Jalen Hurts was getting it to so many different options. They used all 3 running backs. They utilized both A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. You saw positives from Quez Watkins today. When's the last time we got to say that? So you're doing all these things. And then on defense, got pressure early. And then from that point on, there was just like no pressure on the 49ers. I felt like it was pretty easy for them. Everything they did came with ease, which was really, really bad. That's why it's like you said, it's so uncharacteristic and out of the team's DNA. Like if you go for on 4th and 2, you put some pressure on them. Just try to put some pressure on them. Cowboys are well rested and have won 14 straight home games. This is hard to do regardless of what teams have played. I am very worried. I definitely understand the concern and understand the worry, and I think we've gotten to a point in the schedule where it's starting to catch up to this team. We talked about the gauntlet, and they have done a great job so far. Today was ugly. Today was brutal. It was the absolute worst way that you could lose a football game, considering the amount of shit that the 49ers talk and what their fan base has been in terms of these complainers for the past 10 months. You didn't want to lose to them. You didn't want to lose to this team, but you could just feel it just feels like the schedule kind of caught up to the Eagles, right? Like 91 snaps on defense last week. Then you turn around and you play this team who had like a mini bye. They played last Thursday on Thanksgiving, so they have extra rest. You have less rest than normal because you played that long overtime game. That comes after the Chiefs game when I was on a short week. And it's just like, it's starting to, you just felt like the emotional and physical toll of this schedule for the first time today, especially in that second half where it just felt like guys were gassed in a variety of ways. Like the spark wasn't there to get a stop. The fire wasn't there after. This is like a game where you need the most fire. You know exactly what this team was going to do. They're going to suplex your wide receiver. They're going to punch your security guard in the face. They're going to do these things. And we just didn't have like the juice. We didn't have the fire that they normally have. And the schedule is definitely catching up to them. So I definitely understand the concern going into next week with that Cowboys game. I do think when games go this poorly for teams, it causes a refocus. And I do think they just kind of gassed. They were gassed, and next week will be a huge game. But again, they've done such a good job so far and have done such great work that you sit here at 10-2. And if you beat that Cowboys game and you're 11-2, you've completely won the division. You're secured. You're still a game up in that in the NFC conference, because the 49ers have 3 losses. They have a few challenges there in the schedule. They'll play the Seahawks next week. They've got the Ravens still. They got the Rams, who will probably be fighting for a playoff spot. So, that you're still in a good position if you win that game next week. And I think if we beat the Cowboys next week, we're not talking about this game at all. It's just like, yeah, it was bound to catch up to us. And I think it finally did. Even myself, like at points today, I was just like, I don't know if I can handle another second half where it's like you're hanging on every play, every yard, to be like, we got to have this to win this game. And I feel like even as a fan, I was sitting there, I'm like, I'm kind of tired. I'm kind of gassed by this. It was just a perfect storm, which was really, really tough. And like I said, we knew this since May, right? Like, this is not a surprise to anybody within this fan base. Looking at that schedule, looking at where you had to play, whether it's Kansas City, looking at the sandwich of games, which was the 49ers and the Cowboys back-to-back. This is not surprising to anybody at all. We knew that going into the game against the Dolphins, coming off a loss from the Jets, like, we knew that game was going to be important. We knew how good their defense, how good the Dolphins offense was, right? Like, all these things we've known for so long, and we knew that this would be a tiring stretch. And I just think the gas tank is running on E, and hopefully we can refuel for next week. Now, towards the end of the game, I think this will get talked about a lot going into the week, but if Jalen Hurts doesn't return to that game, this is a disaster. I don't think I could do another backup quarterback game in Dallas. And then you would really, really be worried, right? Like, that you would be very, very worried about where this team goes if they did not have Jalen Hurts next week and Marcus Mariota was playing on the road in Dallas. A team, as you pointed out, has won 14 straight home games, and the offense has really been cooking it lately. We saw it last year on Christmas Eve. Gardner Minshew played really well in that game. They scored 34 points, but they just feel like the offense just didn't have enough with the backup quarterback, and they didn't have enough to keep up in a shootout with Dak Prescott and with the Cowboys when they get in those shootouts at AT&T Stadium, which seems to happen more and more lately. So I think it could have been today went as poorly as it could have gone, but this was not worst case scenario. And that was Jalen Hurts being able to come back in that game. That's huge for next week. Now, after that, he comes back in and the starters are still in, and you're sitting there like, why? They're showing Nick Bosa and Fred Warner on the sideline without their helmets on. And you're like, so the 49ers are up by 3 touchdowns and they've pulled their starters and we still have ours in? Why? Just why? And then DeAndre Swift takes a hit over the middle. If he's hurt, that's going to be brutal for next week. You lost your best running back option in a game where you need every option imaginable. I just didn't understand the starters being in at the end of that game there. And it's confusing, and it can really come back to bite you next week if you don't have DeAndre Swift. And you got away with murder with Jalen Hurts coming back into that game and not having a concussion. Why are you testing it down 3 possessions with 6 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter? We lost. It sucks, but it's over. All right, let's be done. I think that is going to be talked about a lot. That'll probably be a radio station topic of conversation, is why were the starters in at the end of the game. I think that'll definitely come up this week. But again, like when we were talking about the blame game, there'll be a lot of talking points. None of them will be good. None of them will be good. Aside from Big Dom, did anyone have like a day that they could be like, yeah, I did my part? I think he's the only guy who's coming out of this game smelling like flowers. But to reiterate everything that's kind of happened this week, I think the 49ers are a good team. I thought the Eagles were a good team. That was kind of my whole spiel coming into this. I was like, just, we don't need to do the talking this time. I don't care about the talking from the 49ers fan base from this past year with the NFC Championship. Like, this is a totally new year. Just play football, right? Nick said his team will fight to the end. He believes that motto to a fault. Yeah, I agree with that. Like, you did fight to the end, but you didn't show enough fight in the second and third quarter to make it a fight to the end. Like, the fight was over. You lost, So it's just one of those things. It was over. So don't get anybody hurt. You have a huge game next week. Arguably, next week is more important than this week. So what are we doing with DeAndre Swift going over the middle and getting killed and possibly having a concussion or a shoulder injury or a chest injury or something like that? Not worth it. Not worth it at all. So again, before we wrap up here, like I said this week, I was just like, I'm so fucking done hearing about the NFC Championship from 49ers fans. You're not going to take over the stadium. This is just not a thing that's going to happen. It wasn't going to change the outcome from last year. It's a new year. Just play the football game. And I think they have a really, really good football team. So just take pride in that. And they did so today. That football team was awesome. And I think they are really, really good. Does it change my opinion on the Eagles and if they could go back to the Super Bowl? No, not really. Because I think there are correctable personnel things that will happen between now and the next time you could possibly face the 49ers. We talked about it. Darius Shaq Leonard and Zach Cunningham at the linebacker position, adding some stability to a group that was absolutely lost today. And then the tight end position for the Eagles, Dallas Goedert should be back next week. I honestly thought he was going to play today. He did not. You got zero, a goose egg, nothing from the tight end position today. It'll be huge to have him back. And in an arms race in the NFC, you need every weapon that you can. They didn't have Goddard today. I thought it made a huge difference on offense and the offensive flow. That will change. These things will change. So as good as the 49ers played, and they played a hell of a game in an emotional game, kicked our ass. But I think there are correctable things between now and the next time you could face them that doesn't lead me to believe that my stomach is in knots and I'm throwing up and I'm crying because the season's over. I'm really excited about where this team's at. I think we're emotionally spent. I think we're physically spent. But I think if you win this game next week, we don't talk about this game at all. You know, if you're 11-2 and beat the Cowboys twice in May, if I would have told you that when you looked at that schedule, you would have signed up for that 100 times out of 100. So you just got to focus on that. Also, Shaq Leonard signs the Cowboys because of this result. That is very petty on his part. Yeah, I think I touched on this earlier in the show, but for him, I don't think win and loss should be the determining factor for him, right? Like if you were mad at the Colts for your playing time situation, why would you go somewhere that isn't going to give you the most playing time? Like the Eagles after today are looking around like, hey, we need weapons at linebacker. We have nobody. Nakobe Dean's out. Zach Cunningham has a hurt hamstring. Sean Bradley tore his Achilles on the first preseason game. We've got nobody at this position. If you want to play, come here and play. So I think win and loss, like, does it play a factor? I'm sure. Yeah, definitely. But at the same time, like you could play for a 10-2 football team and actually play. Like you are going to get the snap count that you were looking for with the Colts that they were not giving to you. You'll be on the field quite a bit for this team. So if he chooses the Cowboys based off win and loss result, I honestly think that's like a bad kind of business decision for him. And we talked about it on our show. I don't think money-wise, things are going to be that different for these two teams. I hope that the Eagles pull the trigger on it because it's one of those low-risk, high-reward situations that I always talk about. They're not going to have to pay that much money. The Colts are footing the bill for this guy. It'll be for the rest of the season, and it can't get worse than what we saw today. So why not bring him in and let's see what happens? And I think if he wants to play, you come here. So that's it on what's a terrible day. It's not lost to me that I don't remember the many times that the Eagles defense has looked this bad in quite some time. So we have been a very, very good team. I'm still confident and content with where we're at. That was abysmal. They were bad. They were really rough and they kicked our ass. I think you need to be accountable for this. And I wish the 49ers would have been like this last year. Just say, hey, you had us today. You kicked our ass. See you next time. Because that's where I'm at with the Eagles. And I hope that we get the 49ers one more time this season and an NFC Championship rematch again. Eagles and Niners are very similar in terms of talent, but San Francisco is slightly more consistent. At times, they are. I think they had a 3-game losing streak earlier this year. And I think Kyle Shanahan kind of grinds his players down with the utilization of them. They talk about it with Christian McCaffrey all the time. Like he gets a lot of touches and then you get into January and February and it kind of winds and grinds you down. So I think that they are a consistent team, but I think the Eagles have been really consistent so far this year too. There's a reason they were 10-1 going into this game, but there was just no gas left in the tank. So that's it. Again, 49ers fans, this is how you do it. You kicked our ass. It sucked. It's over. Congrats. We'll see you next time. That's all you had to do past 10 months. That's all we were asking for. That's all we wanted you to do. You couldn't do it, couldn't handle it. But hats off to you for a good game today. Let's see if we see each other in January. As for us here at Birds vs. Boys, this is why we do the show. This week, Eagles-Cowboys division on the line, NFC conference on the line with a possible 1 seed. Huge game, playoff implications, amazing atmosphere down there in Dallas. It will be phenomenal. We will have content nonstop from this moment until kickoff and beyond next week with the Eagles and the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. We cannot wait. It is time to regroup. Let's rally the troops and let's head into Dallas and see if we can get to 11-2. We will talk to you then.